Poke the Bear is brought to you by Fanduel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 164. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Connor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. I know that on Thursday you were at the Bruins golf event. Did they let you take a swing? I saw they had on they had the longest drive with the wooden driver. Did they let the media members take a big swing with it?
No, thankfully they did not, Evan. I can't think of a worse way to start the season on the wrong foot than to golf and just get mocked by everyone before the season even starts. So thankfully, I think the media used to be able to take part in some capacity in the golf tournament. They have done away with that, which again, for me and my game, I appreciate. So crisis avoided there.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I don't think I would be doing so hot out there. My golfing thing is always if I have probably 5 good shots in an 18 hole game, I'm like, all right, there you go. You know, I remember the good stuff. The bad stuff though, I just can't stand. It kills me to go through that. But anyways, we'll get to some of that stuff in a second. First though, it came out on Tuesday, the Bruins top 100 players for significance, for importance. I know you were a part of that. Were there any surprising omissions for you guys? You felt strongly, banged the table over, said Kasper's Doggovins should be on that list. Was there anyone that you were super passionate about that didn't make the group?
Yeah, I think it's probably more nitpicky than anything. I think people did a pretty good job of encompassing a lot of different errors. They always run the risk of players who maybe from an older generation, especially like the 20s and 30s, 40s, maybe people who didn't watch them play. What about those guys getting omitted? But it seemed like there was a good job by all involved about encompassing all those different errors, making sure they're all represented pretty well. For me, guys, it stick out that I put down. Brian Ralston, I think, was a really good player for this team for a pretty solid stretch. Had a 30-goal season, a couple of 55, 60-point seasons. A key piece to some of those maybe forgettable late 90s, early 2000s team. So would have liked to see him get a little credit. And then it's probably a bit of a stretch, but I gave a vote further down the list to Greg Campbell, who I thought, again, part of that 2011 team, was really important in his role. But I think you also look at the historic 100, you know, they view it as, you know, not even the best player, but also the most legendary. And I think you look at obviously his contributions in 2011, but also in 2013 playing, you know, on the PK with the broken leg. You look back at that 2013 cup run, and obviously people look at Game 7 against Toronto. That one sticks out the most, but I feel like that's another iconic moment from that sequence. It's kind of in that hall of moments like the Krug hit or what have you, where like Krug probably could have gotten some credit beyond the fact that he was just a great player. Like those are moments I think stick with a lot of Bruins fans. So I wanted to give Gregory Campbell a good foot soldier for what he was on the fourth line, some credit as well, but no glaring omissions, not anything that made me flip a table or anything like that.
Well, that's good. That's definitely a good thing. And you didn't even mention Campbell's most important contribution to the Bruins, which was his performance in the 2011
Zoom. Yes, of course.
Yeah,
yes.
I think that deserves a spot in the top 100 on its own. But yeah, I didn't looking at that list. I mean, again, I wasn't a part of it. I'm not super up on the 20s, 30s, and 40s Bruins. So maybe there were people that were omitted from there, but there was no one that I was like, oh, how did they get on the list, or how weren't they on the list? I'm curious to see the full team, which comes out this upcoming week, right? Next week?
The full team then until October.
October.
After the first, not until the first. That's when the discourse will start. We'll dive into that a little bit more when that happens. But we'll say that for another time when it gets to the all centennial team.
What's funny is we would kill for that kind of content like midsummer, would kill for that stuff. And then we'll get it in October when it's
literally the day after the season opener. So
yeah, like we'll have more than enough to discuss, and we'll discuss that. One other thing I remember, this is not on our show planning, but Saturday, today, the day this drops, the Bruins will be having the fashion show at Logan Airport to showcase the new jerseys. There have been people have kind of projected what they might think. I know I saw, in their kind of teaser video, there was some gold and, It's interesting. People have asked me, what do you think about it? What are you hoping it is? I trust them to get it right. I know that's a really annoying take, but they typically don't go super over the top. They're an original 6 team. They have creativity. This isn't the Canadians where they stick with pretty much what they've got. They like to go outside the box, but they don't go too far. This isn't Arizona, or like Vancouver or one of those places. So I trust them. There's a chance that if, the jersey's covered in gold, like the Vegas ones, it might look not so great on a runway, but then it gets on the ice and it looks okay. So, I mean, what do you think? What are you hoping for? Is there anything that you want?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts going into it?
I mean, I'm curious to see what the alternate is. I think people also forget it's like 3 New Jerseys. It's not like this one specialty one that they wear on Saturday night. It's not like the Red Sox red jersey or anything like that. This is like a
The
complete
yellow
overhaul
jerseys.
this year. Yeah, this is a complete overhaul this year. I imagine the home and away would probably evoke some of the 80s style. I hope to see some gold socks. That would be a nice welcome return. But yeah, again, I don't think they're going to deviate too much from kind of the hallmark of what they've done. They've been creative while also sticking with the tradition of the team and all that stuff. I imagine you're looking at probably something, that harkens back to that 80s style. But as you said, I think there'd also be something where you see it on the runway, you see photos of it, and people are like, yeah. And what happens every year? The Bruins unveil a new one. It gets some mixed reaction here and there. Then you see it on the ice, and you're like, all right, I'm going to buy 5 of these at the pro shop. So
pretty sick.
That's how it usually works. So very curious to see what they kind of determine for this. Because again, if you don't like them, you're in trouble because you're going to see them the whole year. So we'll see.
It's going to be an eyesore if you don't like them. I'm with you. I think 80s, 90s look is the best in terms of that. Also, I remember the 06-07 season, their alternate was sort of like harken back to like the 70s style jersey. I would love that too. Like anything from that era, that kind of that kind of jersey, I love. I think that's terrific. And if they go that route, which I feel like they will, I think it'll be a good pick. You're right though. And I will say, and I remember saying this during COVID when we were struggling for topics, they'd had those home and aways for a long time and they were great. A lot of success with those. I'm not like, I think those are awesome home and away jerseys. But it's time to sort of do something different. And this is the perfect season to switch it up. So I like that idea. So we'll see what it ends up looking like. I know we're recording this Friday, so we don't have a breakdown of the jerseys. We're sorry. You'll see our tweets about them. And we can go from there. Training camp's coming and Prospects Challenge is this weekend up in Buffalo. Bruins sending all their top prospects up there to compete. And it begs a question. Which Bruins prospect has the most pressure opening camp? What is your pick, Connor?
Yeah, I look at, you can look at guys like Lohrei and Markulov and Lysell, but I think we've already talked about the fact that these are guys that I don't think the onus is on them to make. Again, they'd love to break camp with the Bruins, but I think we're all expecting them to probably need some more time to marinate down in Providence. They've already got a tough hill to climb in terms of leapfrogging, especially like Markulov and Lysell. You're looking at not 4th line roles. You're looking at them beating guys like PTO, like Heinen and Cheasom, but also like Frederick or Geeky, James Van Riemsdyk, what have you. So that's a tough ask for them. I look at one guy that I think has a potential to fight for a role is Johnny Beecher, because I think you look at, as much as that bottom 6 is in so much state of flux and there's so many different ways you can kind of roll out the best 6-man unit there, 4C still seems to be a spot where there's not like a set proven option there. Like you look at like 3rd line wing, Frederick, all the guys we mentioned, a lot of pieces in place. 4C is it, Patrick Brown is the only kind of veteran incumbent there. So I think there is a spot for a guy like Beecher to fight for it. But, and again, we've talked about Beecher. I really like his style of play. I think he can be a really impactful guy at 6'3". His skating ability can make an impact at the NHL level, even if the offense maybe isn't there. He could be a really dependable 4C. So I think there's an opportunity for him, especially to carve out a set role. But again, it's going to come down to him and what he can prove, because you just need to see him take another step forward in terms of being more consistent. Again, I don't think anyone's expecting 20 goals from the guy, but if he can pot a goal here or there or show some offensive capabilities, I think that can also go a long way towards him fighting for a spot. So I think he's a guy that has a lot at stake going into this training camp. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join Fanduel. The app is easy to use and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. And frankly, that's the best part about Fanduel, is that you can bet on anything. You want to bet on how many touchdowns Mac Jones is going to throw this year? Be my guest. Maybe how many wins the Bruins are going to have in 2023-24. Go for it. You can do it all. So bet now on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Yeah, I would agree with you on Beecher. Again, first round pick, a guy that, I know we have always said bottom 6, and I know the consensus is bottom 6, but like that's a first round pick. You expect him to, like Frederick, contribute at the NHL level. And has the skating, defensive abilities. I know the hockey sense is something people kind of get on him for here and there, and the offensive abilities. But again, I'm really curious to see what he can, if he can kind of carve out a role in this season. It doesn't have to be this season, but I think with there being an opening on the fourth line as 4C, it makes some sense if he can make it this year. Again, a guy that Montgomery has to trust. They have a lot of veterans down there that can be trustworthy. So I think Beecher has to kind of prove it there. I'll go with a different one, though. Mark McLaughlin. McLaughlin's kind of been banging on the door. Feels like for a while. It's only been, he came up in the 21-22 season. Everybody thought he'd make the team last fall. Didn't. He's a guy who will contribute at the NHL level. I think there is an NHL spot for him somewhere. I just think for his own sake, he's a hometown guy, BC guy too. Like, you want to make this team at some point, or else are you going somewhere? Are they dealing you for like a 6th or 7th round pick because that he can contribute on a fourth line somewhere or in a bottom 6 role somewhere. So I think for his own good, I'm not saying they're going to trade him, but I think at some point, like if there's just too much of a logjam down there and you have Lauko and Beecher and Merkulov, all 3 of those guys have higher ceilings. McLaughlin, you know what you're going to get. I think for the most part, I don't think there's a ton more there in terms of, offensive ceiling. He's going to be a second line right winger soon. Like, I think he's a very, very, very solid bottom 6 right winger center. And I'm just curious, if he doesn't make the team this year, is a team calling and saying, hey, we need kind of a reliable young piece that maybe we can develop into something. And that's a guy that maybe, goes somewhere else. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but just in terms of pressure on him, I think, and he's reliable. That's the other thing, is like, he's a guy that I think could fit in the Bruins fourth line this year and make some sort of consistent, reliable impact. So those two seem like the main two. I don't sense a lot of pressure on Lowry. It's his first camp. Lysell, I think the upside is there, but the top 6 is pretty full for right now. I feel like you don't need to rush him unless, and we'll get into this more in coming weeks, but like if he's kicking ass at training camp and he's kicking ass in the preseason, maybe you consider him for the third line right wing spot. But even then it's like, I don't know, extra seasoning doesn't hurt anybody.
Yeah, I think like the best case scenario for a guy like Merkulov or Lysell or even Lowry is go down to Providence, really improve your overall game. And then if either there's stagnant play up at the NHL or these guys are pushing hard enough, if you warrant a spot and all of a sudden you're in the equation by January or February, or, I think Lowry needs a lot of time in Providence, but if he's a guy that you get to March and you're getting ready for a playoff run and he's in place to kind of give you an added boost there, I think that's what you're more looking at as opposed to him breaking camp. Again, they'd love to be surprised and have a guy look like a Carlo or someone else like that kind of exceeds expectations. But if you're able to find that spot, or a guy like Merkulov mid-season becomes a guy that maybe gives you a bit more of a scoring punch in that third line spot, I think that's how you kind of view it, as opposed to the onus is on them. Like, this is my last chance to break camp with the team. I don't think that's the case for any of those guys.
Yeah, I don't think it is either, and I don't think there's any rush. I know that people are going to see, a Lysell highlight at camp and be like, oh my God, he's ready for the NHL level. And it's like, no, it's fine. You can take time. Nothing wrong with that. And we're a pro getting the bag podcast if you're a player. And we're a pro take more time to develop podcast in the minors. We've always said that. I think we've always been consistent on those two things. Everything else has been a little inconsistent on, but those two things were very
just
consistent.
Those things, nothing else. Yes,
nothing else. Just those things. So back to the golf tournament on Thursday. Montgomery acknowledged that defense is this team's biggest strength. I think it hits on a thing that we've kind of been discussing is like, are you going to outscore a team like Toronto or Tampa or even like a Florida or a Buffalo? Probably not. But where you do have the advantage on those teams is on your back end.
Yeah, I think it's something where Jim Montgomery more or less mapped out. Listen, we all know the forward grouping is going to be really, overhauled this year. As much as you have talent on the wings, you still have to figure out what you have with guys like Coyle and Zaka. And again, as we've said, bottom six, who the hell knows what it's going to look like? Even when we open the season on October 11th, it's going to look very different. I think that third and fourth line throughout the year. It's going to change week to week probably. If you're the Bruins, it's all going to come down to their defensive capabilities. And Montgomery more or less said, you look at their goaltending, you look at their defense, they're still two of the top units in their respective fields in the NHL. So you're going to have to rely heavily on them. And I think Montgomery made a good point that it's not just the D zone play and how important that is, but they're going to have to rely on them a lot more in terms of killing plays beyond the D zone. Like, I think one thing people look at with guys like Krejci and Bergeron, obviously, but even a guy like Thomas Nosek is how much plays died off of them killing plays earlier on and before it got to the D zone. And by doing that, not only is it make life easier for the defenseman, also freed them up to be a little bit more engaged offensively. A lot more is now going to fall on them to be, not do their jobs, but a lot of it's going to fall on them now to be that last line before it gets to the goaltending. So, it's something you look at this team defensively, McAvoy, Lindholm. I think McAvoy also, we've talked about that before. Another year removed from major surgery, I think should probably do wonders for him. But, Grzelcyk, Carlo, Forbort most likely slots in there. And again, you lose Clifton, but I think Kevin Shattenkirk can be a very solid replacement in more of a lesser role in that third pairing. You have the ingredients in place for very stout defense once again, but how they either run with it, they, keep on that level of play, because if they dip, then you're all of a sudden running into some issues because you don't have the same firepower to alleviate from the faults that you expect on the defensive side of things.
Or if injuries hit. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah,
is if injuries hit.
Yeah.
I mean, but that goes for everything. That's not just defense. But I mean, I wrote down like Grzelcyk, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, Forbort, Shattenkirk. It's a damn good six back there. I mean, that's fine. Like, yes, you're missing Orlov, and you're missing Clifton. But as you said, Shattenkirk's a solid replacement for Clifton, and Orlov you couldn't keep. And Grzelcyk, McAvoy, as a pairing, works very well together. So like, to me, and then you have Swayman and Olmark in the back end. And that's why, like, they're not going to suck. This is going to be a competitive team. I know we've said this a lot, and we'll say it more going forward unless things change. But like, that is the key. That is the backbone of this team. And I think, the Bruins are fortunate that defense has been a premium thing for them over the past bunch of, the last 2 decades, really, since Chara and Bergeron kind of came to. Is like, that was their thing. They were very set on the back end. The only thing that not scares me, but like you think about last year, Montgomery was fine with them trading chances. He felt like, hey, we can, capitalize on more of our chances than the other team. I mean, you look at that, like, the Zaka, Krejci, Pastrnak line, that was not the most defensively responsible line in the world. And you could outscore teams like that. You got to change up a little bit. I think that's where, you mentioned, you don't have guys like Krejci, Bergeron, Nosek anymore who can break those plays up in the neutral zone. Maybe you do need to, and you're going to sacrifice scoring because you don't have Krejci and Bergeron this year, and Hall and Bertuzzi. But I do think you also have to maybe tweak some things, maybe a little stylistically, just to put an emphasis more on defense and things like that. So, I think that can potentially work out for them down the road. It'll be interesting to see who they pick as their next assistant coach. Montgomery saying on
Yes.
Thursday that they will be hiring someone in that role. And John Gruden was in charge of the D, so it'll be someone most likely who will take that over. So
actually, Jim Montgomery speaking to Steve Conrad, the Boston Herald, they're switching things. So now apparently it's going to be Joe Sacco's running D.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God.
So,
good catch on that. I'm glad you caught me.
Everyone else is switching differently. I think Chris Kelly's now helping to run the power plays. So
yes,
a lot of stuff changing around. So it'll be curious to see, one, obviously who they hire, but also what exactly their role is, whether it's, is it PK work? Is it, there's so many different ways they can kind of carve out different assignments for their coaching staff. So that should hopefully be in the pipeline for next week.
And Matt Patricia and Joe Judge will run the offense and the defense too. So it'll be,
I believe so. Yes.
Yes.
I believe they confirmed that. So I'll follow
source.
up, but yes.
Per source. By the way, Chris Kelly, it's an interesting thing because Chris Kelly was never on a power play ever. And, people are kind of like, oh, why is he on a power play? Think about it. It's a guy who was a outstanding penalty killer. He knows the ins and outs of how to beat good power plays. So now he's jumping on the other side. All right, what was something I couldn't really cover as a penalty killer? Things like that. So I actually think the Kelly thing's interesting on the power play. I'm curious to see how that works out, just given his expertise on the other side of things and how, he's almost like he's trying to like beat himself. Like, oh, as a penalty killer, I was doing this and power play will be doing that. So anyways, an interesting guy in the top 6. Speaking of guy who's on a power play, Jake DeBrusk. DeBrusk is an interesting one this year, obviously going into a contract year, so you can expect 45 goals. But he's going to, obviously on a different line this year, won't have Bergeron in the middle, most likely will have Coyle. And speaking on Thursday, mentioned how he's a guy who wants to get more into driving play. And I think, when you look at Bergeron, Marchand, and DeBrusk on the left side in the past years, DeBrusk has, certainly carried the puck quite a bit, but was sort of a passenger sometimes just because you're playing with Patrice Bergeron. Now, though, it feels like he's going to be a guy who takes a little bit more of an onus carrying the puck into the O-zone.
Yeah, that's something that DeBrusk touched on Thursday. And also something Jim Montgomery mentioned that, they want him to be a go-to player on whatever line he's on. And it's going to be a key part of what they're trying to do, right? And you look at this Bruins offense and what you want to get more out of them. A lot of it's going to rely on their wings generating offense and generating play and kind of pulling along. Not to say that they expect or know that Coyle and Zacha are just going to be passengers, but as you put those guys in high pressure roles, it'll do them some good if you have guys like Pastrnak with Zacha, being that conduit of, Charlie Coyle is a very solid puck possession center with really good defensive game, but if you want to unlock more offense, sticking him with a guy like Marchand makes a lot of sense. And if DeBrusk can take another step forward and be not just a guy that, if you feed the puck down low, you can, generate some offense, a guy that can drive play, drive to the net, capitalize on rush chances, impact the game in a number of ways. And you kind of saw that last year, as much as he was maybe the third guy on that line with Marchand and Bergeron, made a lot happen, like was moving his feet, could impact the play on the forecheck, obviously became a really trusted penalty killer as well. And I think his ability to continue to impact the game and be a line driver is going to be huge for this team, because I think there's a lot to like about what that top line of Coyle, Marchand, and DeBrusk can bring in terms of a two-way kind of style of play. Like, you carve out a lot of ozone time for the Zacha Pastrnak grouping as expected. That's kind of your home run hitters right there. But if you have a line like Coyle, DeBrusk, and Marchand that can be steadying their own end, negate the other team especially, while also chipping in, that can go a long way as well. And I think it all comes down to whether or not DeBrusk, who's kind of your quick strike offensive, conduit on that line, to take another step forward. So it's something that's good that, Montgomery obviously wants more of that. It makes a lot of sense, but also DeBrusk is very cognizant. I think the last couple of years of being with Bergeron not only, builds that confidence, but I think for him, he's shown himself and for everyone else that he can be a guy that, even if it's not, a patented, stretch of games where he's got 5 goals in 6 games, he can still impact well beyond just however many goals he kind of puts in the back of the net.
And guys who drive play more typically make a little more money. So I think that's another part of it. People forget that if you are driving play and a guy that you can be relied on your line in the top 6, you should get paid. And I think DeBrusk realized that. And by the way, he's taken steps in the past couple of years, especially last year, to get to that point. So I'm not saying it's going to come out of thin air this year. Another thing with DeBrusk I've always liked is just the nose for the net to compete. I just think that is something that you can't teach. You don't see a lot of, it's not every day that you get a first round pick, kind of a goal scoring guy who that's how he gets all his goals, just driving to the net, finding spots that, usually it's, guys who can snipe or guys who can dangle. He's a guy who just freaking puts his head down and just goes straight to the net, which I think is a valuable thing. We've talked about it a lot in terms of him getting paid and sort of where they head in that direction. So should be interesting, as it always is. Connor, what can people look forward to from you over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe?
Yeah, we'll obviously have more tangible news to report on this weekend and going into this upcoming week with training camp right around the corner. So lineup projections, roster battles, obviously the new sweaters. We'll have a whole bunch of stuff throughout the upcoming days looking at the Bruins' upcoming season. So you can read all that stuff over at Boston.com. I'll be at the Patriots game on Sunday as well. So we have everything else related to Boston sports over on Boston.com. So please read all of our stuff there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all of that. And remember to go subscribe to New England Hockey Journal. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week.